Welcome to the first episode in a Legendarium series about the life and reign of King Richard III of England. In the first installment, Fall of the Kingmaker, we will talk about how young Richard was born into a dangerous world and earned his spurs on the battlefield at the age of 18. When Richard was born on October 2nd, 1452 in Northamptonshire, few imagined that he would win fame, let alone claim the throne. He was the son of Richard Plantagenet, 3rd Duke of York, and his wife Cecily Neville. Remarkably, he was the 12th of 13 children. Of those, 4 sons and 3 daughters survived into adulthood. Most likely, young Richard spent his early years in Fotheringhay Castle. Even as a child, his family, the House of York, fought a series of wars with the ruling family Lancaster for control of the English throne. The roots of this conflict lay a century past with King Edward III. Edward's eldest son, the Black Prince, died before he could take the throne, and so his grandson, Richard II, took the crown upon his death. Because King Edward III had 4 other sons to provide for in royal style, he endowed all with vast duchies. The revenues from these huge estates allowed these sons and their heirs to support large retinues of armed men. Because of this, lords could easily disrupt royal rule, carry out private feuds, and even challenge the king's government. In time, the system would be described as bastard feudalism and made the Wars of the Roses possible. Richard's father, the Duke of York, had good reason to challenge King Henry of Lancaster, as he'd managed to lose all of France and empty the royal treasury during his reign. In December 1460, Richard lost his father, uncle, and older brother at the Battle of Wakefield to royal forces. According to the chroniclers, the cruel Queen Margaret had them beheaded to amuse her young but already vicious son Edward of Westminster. Quite wisely, Cecily sent her younger children Richard and George to the continent, where they lived in Flanders. It is hard to know if this tragedy grieved the young Richard. After all, great families in that time were not bound by love and affection, but by obedience and political ambition. In any case, only the next February, another of Richard's elder brothers, now Duke Edward of York, won a crushing victory over the Lancastrians at Towton, the bloodiest battle ever fought on English soil. Only 9 years old, young Richard participated in the coronation of his elder brother as King Edward IV. Young Richard also became a Knight of the Garter and received the grand title Duke of Gloucester. During Richard's adolescence, he lived with Richard Neville, the Earl of Warwick. Young Richard had likely already begun training as a knight, learning how to ride horses, use weapons, and behave well at court. Living up to his future nickname, the Kingmaker, Warwick planned to not only keep the House of York on the throne, but marry his daughters, Isabel and Anne, into the new ruling family. While living with Warwick, young Richard likely saw his brother George married to Isabel. And as he reached adulthood, Richard took a white boar as his personal sigil, while his knight's motto was the old French phrase, Loyauté me lie. Translated into English, that means loyalty binds me. One of the classic traits associated with Richard is his deformed body, namely his hunchbacked posture. This reflected his enemies' belief that a misshapen body must house an equally misshapen mind and soul. However, sources in Richard's time make no mention of such an obvious deformity. They do mention one of his shoulders being slightly higher than the other, while the more outlandish claims came after Richard's death. A medical examination of Richard's skeleton in 2012 determined that he had idiopathic scoliosis, and modern experiments have shown that it would be possible too with custom-designed armor and specially designed saddles for Richard Plantagenet to continue with his career as a knight, and he would need all those knightly skills in years to come. His host, Warwick the Kingmaker, played a leading role in Edward's government and intended to marry him into the French aristocracy to make peace on the continent. Instead, a woman named Elizabeth Woodville caught King Edward's eye on the side of the road. According to lore, Woodville stood under an oak tree with her sons, putting herself directly in Edward's path to beg for the land of her late husband, who had been killed fighting Edward at Towton. Edward was struck by Woodville's legendary beauty and begged that she become his mistress. Not one to be bullied, the widow pulled out a dagger and put it against her own throat, threatening to kill herself if Edward did not stop his advances. Somehow, this led to mutual respect, romance, and a wedding, which Warwick rightly took as an insult to his hard work. And so the Kingmaker sought to unmake King Edward IV. Richard was one of the only notables who stayed loyal to King Edward in this time of trouble, even as his brother George defected to Warwick's camp. Edward and Richard fled England as Warwick restored Henry VI to the throne and married his daughter Anne Neville to Henry's son Edward of Westminster. Fortunately for the House of York, Warwick had overplayed his hand. The two royal brothers returned from the continent and engaged the Lancastrians at the Battle of Barnet. Though only 18 years old, Richard Plantagenet fought bravely for his brother and helped defeat Warwick's rebels. Prince Edward of Westminster died later at the Battle of Tewkesbury. According to lore, Lancastrian knights took refuge in a nearby abbey, claiming sanctuary. King Edward and Richard ignored the rules, dragged them out, killed them, and then prayed for their sins in said abbey. With her father and husband, Edward of Westminster, dead, Anne Neville was forced to marry Duke Richard in what must have been among the most awkward weddings ever. After all, poor Anne had to wed the man who may well have killed her husband. That wraps things up for this episode of The Legendarium. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, press like. If you want to see more, press subscribe. And if you've got anything to say, let me know in the comments section. Thanks again for joining me, and I hope you have a great rest of the day.